So I've been playing Overwatch competitive for a long time, and throughout all this time, I've seen a lot of ups and downs, but today I want to talk about my favorite season of Overwatch competitive, and what I personally believe was the best season of Overwatch competitive, at least in my own personal opinion. Now yes, there are a lot of problems coming from the season, but, let's just overlook some of those and instead talk about the great things about it, and as well, talk about maybe what the current seasons could kind of learn from this, and maybe why the current seasons haven't been all that fun in comparison. With that said though, guys, let's get started right here. So, if I had to actually name my favorite season, right now I'm going to say that it is Overwatch Competitive Season 2. And I know that was a long time ago, but I feel like this was the season before any real problems showed up in Overwatch Competitive. It was a season where, yes, there was still a somewhat defined meta, but you could still play the majority of the cast, you could still do a lot of really big power plays, and yeah, a lot of people were still extremely interested in the game and trying really hard to get better, so that's a thing that was kind of nice as well. Now lately, yeah, we've had really bad problems with extremely strong metas and people not really caring as much anymore, but again, going back, those weren't, huge problems. Now, in Season 2, there was two main metas. One meta, which was the Zenyatta-Lucio double support meta, and then the other meta, which was, when Ana was released and buffed up a little bit, which was the Beyblade meta, which, personally, I enjoyed both of them. With the Zenyatta-Lucio meta, I'm going to talk about this one mainly, because this was probably my favorite one that I played through, but the other one I also go over a little bit, mainly at the end. So, to the Zen-Lucio meta, it sounds kind of weird on paper, but essentially how it worked out was that you had the Zenyatta and Lucio in your backline, sometimes in the mid line, speed boosting you in, speed boosting you out, giving you a decent amount of mobility while also supplying quite a bit of damage to the enemy front line, and, overall just a decent amount of damage because they're both somewhat damaging characters. Now, other than that, you also had either a hit scan DPS or a flanker DPS. The hit scan would supply a lot of damage to the enemy front line, or the flanker would try to kill the Zenyatta almost every single game, so you had both of those, and then you can kind of just go for other cheese characters, really whatever you wanted, to just deal extra damage. You could go for Bastion if you wanted to, you could go for Junkrat, you could go for someone like Roadhog to get hooks to help yourself in the front line. There were a lot of choices, and essentially how the game boiled down to was what team can get the most damage out first to either get a pick and then push off of that, or get their ultimates first and then push off those ultimates. And it was a really nice ebb and flow. It wasn't way too fast. You didn't fight every single second that you saw the enemy and immediately dive into them like you would with a Winston Diva meta from Season 6, but it wasn't way too slow like in Spam meta or like in Brigitte meta where you just kind of wait forever and the fights last for 5 trillion years. It was honestly kind of in the middle of the two, and I think that's why I like this so much, because it was just kind of whatever you wanted it to be, and most team comps could work pretty well. Now, what I thought was even better about this meta is that it really, again, didn't force an exact team comp. There wasn't Brigitte that was just broken, there wasn't Mercy that just ruined the entire game. There were strong heroes, again, like, let's say Zenyatta, Lucio, and Genji, but you could play other ones and you'd be fine. As long as you had a Zen or Lucio, you could swap the other one off to a main healer. You could have a Mercy. You could eventually have a Ana when that finally came out. There were a lot of nice, fun options. And while, yeah, there were less heroes back then than now, I think the heroes that actually were in the game kind of fit better. And I think that a lot of them were less frustrating to play against. And I think that may be another reason why, it just was so fun, at least for me. Now, another thing I want to talk about right here is that the meta overall was still pretty fast, and I think this is a problem, again, I've been having with the current metas. For a long time, it's either, blow your brains out fast, or, extremely boring slow. But this was, again, in between the two. You still had a shield tank for the most part, you still had a good amount of pick potential, you still had some dive, but mainly focused on just getting a lot of damage out, and whoever had the better skilled players, or sometimes the better positioning, could win the game off of that. And I'm going to say oftentimes that doesn't really happen too much anymore. And something else that I thought was really awesome about this time is that there were main targets, and I think that has kind of changed. In the past, Season 2, you knew you had to kill the Zenyatta, or you had to kill the hit scan, or maybe you just want to push to the Rhine Shield as fast as possible, hope you can break that, and then try to push to the enemy front line. Those were your 3 main targets. When you compare it to now, where it's kind of hard to know where to go, kind of hard to know what to do, and I feel like overall the game is a lot harder to follow now, and maybe that's why esports are kind of having a problem. But the game was, pretty basic, and while, you could say that that is, less skillful, or sometimes less entertaining if you know a lot about the game, at least for a lot of my friends that weren't way too into it, I could, go to a random tournament at a Microsoft store like I did a few times, and they could kind of understand what's going on, which is why I think this was, well, really good. Now, some other things I want to talk about right here is that this had a extremely good DPS meta, at least in my own opinion, and I think this is probably because there wasn't really any, exact characters that just completely dominated over everything else. And while there were, again, some really good ones, McCree, depending on the patch, Soldier, depending on the patch, Tracer, which was always pretty good, and Alfera, sometimes, depending on if McCree was good or not, Reaper, Hanzo, Bastion, Junkrat, Mei, who was actually really good in this patch as well. You could kind of go for whatever you wanted. It really just depended on what your strategy was. Do you want to try to pick off the front line? Well, probably go for Mei. Do you want to really focus on trying to get picks on the enemy back line? Go for Hanzo. Sure, it might not be the best strategy, but it still kind of can work. Again, Reaper if you want to get the front line, Bastion if you want to take out the shield, but risk yourself, not getting ultimates and maybe not being able to position yourself way too well. It was kind of a give and take, and I think this was probably the last time that we've ever had this, because ever since then, I mean, you're kind of forced to do what the meta tells you to, but back here, it was kind of up to you to tell the meta what you wanted it to do, which, yeah, again, I thought that that was a really, interesting thing that I wish that we could somehow bring back a little bit. Now, another thing I want to talk about here that I think was something that I guess they can't really fix, but a thing that I really liked about the past is that back in the day, the supports actually felt like you could kill them, and it was not annoying to kill supports, and they were still very strong. You still had Zen and Lucio and Ana and Mercy, and Ana was probably the most annoying when she got released, but all the supports you could still somewhat dive onto, you could still somewhat snipe, you could still get onto them, and the only real way for them to deal with you is either by outskilling you and killing you, or getting help from a teammate. And I thought that this was, kind of what I feel like support should be able to do. And for a long time now, I feel like the Overwatch team has kind of been adding things that is, nice as a support player, but very frustrating to play against as someone that does not want to play support. The new BS Mercy ult that makes you can never kill Mercy, that isn't that fun, or at least it wasn't that fun when it was originally released. The Moira heal on herself, plus the heal ball, plus being able to just shift out of any trouble, that's not that fun to play against. Brigida's stuns and shield and healing and crowd control and damage, yeah, you can kind of see where I'm going here. Back in Season 2, supports for the most part were pretty squishy. Supports were pretty counterable, and while they were strong, it felt like you knew what to do against them. And overall, the game felt like you kind of knew what to do and what to go for the average player, while again now, it just feels really weird. And I honestly do kind of miss the times when you could go into a game, you could really pick anything, but there weren't any extremely annoying things showing up every single game like a lot of the supports are kind of doing right now. Now, don't get me wrong, there were a lot of annoying heroes. Mei when she was very strong, that was annoying. Symmetra, that wasn't the funnest thing in the world. And Roadhog, before he was nerfed, that was a pain. But they weren't completely dominating, and they weren't 100% must-pick heroes like a lot of supports have been, which I think is a thing that, puts a lot of these annoying supports even further down the hole a little bit. And I guess the final thing I want to say about Season 2 and why I like this meta so much is that it did lead to the Ana and Reaper meta, which was also pretty enjoyable. But both of the metas in Season 2 were focused on playing heroes to the highest skill cap possible, and mainly just trying to outplay the opponent, player to player. You weren't always trying to just try to outposition as your team. You weren't always just trying to see who could get the better singular dive every single game. A lot of the times it was based on what player could outpick the other one. What player could get more DPS out per second so they could get their ultimate out faster. Who could have the better harmony orbs. Who could have the better speed boosts. And it would really depend and change who's the important key factor within the game every single game. And I don't know, I personally really liked that. Even in Season 2 with the Beyblade meta, I know a lot of people were somewhat frustrated by that. But as Ana, you could still sometimes counter the Beyblade by getting a super key sleep dart. Stuff like that just really isn't in the game much anymore. And I don't know, for myself, it has been something I've been kind of missing. And overall, I wish that somehow they could push a meta that, again, is focusing on trying to just, really make so you have to outplay your opponent, and I guess focus more on personal skill somewhat than just on team play all the time, which, I guess it depends on what you like, but that was a thing that I really liked about the season. But anyways, there you guys go. Those are all my ideas. Now as well, I could say that a lot of the new heroes, I haven't really liked how they've turned out in the game. They've created really somewhat annoying metas, so maybe it is kind of unfair for me going back way back here. But I just want to give my reasons why I like this one, and hopefully you guys kind of enjoyed that. I just like talking about Overwatch, and since nothing that interesting has happened for a while, I'm just going back to the past and trying to say my main ideas. With that said though, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, comment down below your own opinions, and what you personally feel like was the best Overwatch in Overwatch. What the heck? What was the best season in Overwatch competitive? And as always, hit the subscribe button to see more videos like this. And as always, guys, though, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And as always, again, have a wonderful day.